Well, all right, Steve, welcome to my patch.
Yeah, thank you.
Down here at Lyme Regis. We're obviously about, 50 miles further west than you at Kimmeridge.
Yeah.
But we're also 50 odd million years of time older than you. So we're in the very start of the Jurassic down on Monmouth Beach here. And what's really fantastic about this part of the coast is that we actually see the recovery of life after the great extinction event at the end of the Triassic, which is literally just down there, about 20 metres or half a mile around the coast.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, of course, of this coastline, is you can walk through the different layers. So you could actually find this Jurassic rock at Kimmeridge, but it would cost you a fair bit of money. It would cost you a drilling rig and about 4 weeks of drilling, several £1 million. You drill down about, 2,000 or 3,000 metres, and you'd actually find these Jurassic rocks where you are.
Yep.
It's much cheaper and easier to come down the coast and see them in the cliff here.
Definitely.
But there are some similarities, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the cliffs, they very much look the same. You know, that mudstone sort of shale. Well, we get shales, you'll get limestones, but they look very similar in deposition.
Yeah, and repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
That's right.
Except this is very much more rich in life.
I'm glad you said that. I didn't want to say that our fossils are better than yours.
No, they are. I'll give you that. But the volume of people that visit here, if you find something really unique, something like a reptile, if you're not very, very careful and collect it at the time, someone else owns the other half or the other bit. And that's the only problem here, that a lot of collectors collect an element of it and the other collector finds it and they don't give it up. So in some ways it's lost to science, whereas at Kimmeridge they're extremely difficult to find, and if they are, well, they're not preserved to this sort of detail, but we can get these things out. We haven't got that pressure that someone else is going to come along and destroy it between us.
Yeah, but overall most of the collectors work together quite well, but as I've learnt with everything walk in life, the arguments are led by the extremes on both sides.
They are, but I've seen some horrendous material here where someone didn't recognise what they had or thought they had, and then destroyed the other half of it before it was realised that what it represented.
But funnily enough, on the positive side, Chris Moore's got that fantastic pliosaurid, that really early plesiosaur. So it's a plesiosaur with a long neck, but it's got a pliosaur type skull. That was found here, right where we're sitting on the beach by the ammonite pavement, by four different collectors. And Chris, we're able to bring it all together. Yeah. Fabulous specimen.
Oh, it is. It's one of the most spectacular specimens that come out in the last 100 years, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's not, and say, 50 million years older than your pliosaur. It's the earliest, most complete example.
The only difference is, though, Richard, our pliosaurs are much bigger than your Liassic.
That is very true. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay.
And as you touched upon, the other issue is that we don't have the facility here to house these incredible fossils that local collectors have found.
Which, as you know, is a great shame, and it's been long sort of debated over, and perhaps in 10 years' time we still might be arguing over the fact, because the people that are in power actually haven't got the wherewithal to realise potentially what they've got on their doorstep.
Well, yeah. That's quite possible. We've got a recording scheme here. This is the real tragedy. We've got a recording scheme with World Heritage. We put that together as a way to demonstrate the management of this really rich fossil site. And the collectors largely have followed it. They record their important things so everyone can get an idea what's being found. But without that acquisition, the management of the site is incomplete.
Yeah, it would be nice to know if that record has been utilised by the academics for research then. Have you ever done anything
to a limited degree, I think some people have. I mean, the big issue, as you know, is academics are not going to spend time on specimens they can't describe.
True.
And they can't describe them until they're in a secured museum. Yeah.
Whereas, well, down at Kimmeridge now we've got the museum, of course, the local collectors, which are far and few between, but they're persistent. In other words, they're regular people that go down collecting. We've actually got an arrangement, really, where they understand quite fully that something really scientific important that's quite large would not sit very well in their living room, and because of the material that we collect, which is a lot of it composed of a mineral called pyrite in the bones, it's actually a little bit more susceptible to sort of decay and degradation. So they've actually donated highly scientific important material to the collection, which is for everyone. It's not just my collection, it's for everyone.
And I think that would be the case here if we had a similar type of facility.
Yeah, I think so.
But we don't. But anyway, going back to the similarities and differences, so we've got this very cyclic pattern to the sediments. Now there's a bit of rock falling off the cliff. And these are thought to be due to the Milankovic cycle. So the Earth is wobbling on its axis, and one of those wobbles is about 23,000 years. That wobble means that the position of any one part of the Earth's surface to the sun changes, which affects the climate, which affects the stuff that goes into the sea. So you've got it, haven't you?
Yeah.
But you don't have the limestones. You have the black shales and then the paler shales.
We've got the mudstones, the organic sort of shales, and occasional limestones.
Yeah.
But they're very far and few
Whereas
between.
we've got this very regular pattern of organic shale, pale shale, limestone, pale shale, organic shale, limestone, repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
And obviously, when it comes to the ichthyosaurs, we look in the black laminated shales, which are just like your shales, because that's when the seabed became poisonous and stagnant and noxic.
Yeah.
We ought to talk about this as well. You haven't got one of these, have you?
No, not an ammonite pavement. If you were to get those, cut them out, could you prep on the other side? Are they sort of 3D or are they not?
Some people are trying to do it, but the centres are they carve the centres.
All right.
I don't like them, you know. Like we said with the constructed ichthyosaurs, they never look the same, do they?
No.
But
look, another thing you get here, we get a lot of crushing of our stuff. Do you get it here much?
In the shale, yeah, we do, but in the limestones, less so.
Yeah.
Because the limestones formed out of.
But I mean, in the shales, it must be compaction of them.
But this little thin black shale here, that one there, doesn't look like much, but actually there's some very nice ichthyosaurs in there. My first ichthyosaur I found in that bed on the other side of Lyme. And you can see below it the shale's full of fossil borings.
Yeah, yeah.
And above it we've got the limestone, but that's also full of borings. If you wet it, you can actually see the texture much more easily, clearly.
Oh yeah.
You see all the burrows running through here, as well as all the ammonites.
Yeah.
So this was a seabed that was full of life, full of oxygen. And our ichthyosaurs, if they died and sank into this stuff, they tend to get smashed and broken. Whereas the black shale, just like your shale, is well preserved. The chambers on that one there, nice, aren't they? Very nice.
I wonder what the reduction rate is on that compaction in those shales, though, because it must be a hell of a lot.
I've been told it's 2/3.
Yeah.
Because that's the other really curious thing. If each of these couplets of rock is a Milankovic cycle lasting 23,000 years, then an ammonite like this ammonite here would take hundreds of years to get buried. And that just can't be the case. They die, they sink to the seafloor, they get buried quickly. And so in reality what's happening is there are probably big gaps in the rock record here where there are actually periods of no deposition or even erosion.
Erosion off
in between. So we're only actually looking at a tiny fraction of the time that was here. And that's why the species appear to evolve so quickly, because of course actually most of the time is missing. But a fossilised wood. But no one's actually managed to resolve why this pavement is like this. You know, I think people, university groups come down every year, they measure the numbers and the size and the orientation.
And they come up with all sorts of...
No, one suggestion is this bed just took longer than all the rest to form. So there was more time for the ammonites to accumulate. But I don't believe that, because the limestone looks just the same as all the other limestones. I think it's just a chance event. There was a school of ammonites swimming across, some sort of anoxic or catastrophic event happened to the seawater, and they all died and sank at the same time. And it's very widespread, because this same bed is found on the other side of Lyme Regis and also round the corner. But look, here's the black shale, really nice. Yeah, so what we've got, Steve, look, you can see we've got hard limestones, which are absolutely full of things like the devil's toenail. So that was a healthy seabed, full of life. Then we've got the black paper shales, very like your black paper shales. And in between them, pale and marls. And the marls are often have quite a lot of benthic fauna in as well, so clams and burrows and so on. So our ichthyosaurs, just like yours, we're looking in the black shale. Because quite that's when the seabed. Well, they are, but one of the most prolific beds is only about 5 mil thick.
Christ,
it must have been a real sort of snap anoxic event. I mean, whether or not that poisonous event affected the whole water column and everything died at the same time, or whether it's just the seabed became poisonous and the animals died and sank into it, I don't know. But that's what we look for, and this is a lovely fresh piece there. And it wouldn't be unreasonable, like to see a series of ribs sticking out that way.
Oh, it'd be lovely to get out as well, wouldn't it?
That would be a
That would
delight.
be, yeah, no,
a delight in that stuff there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Or a fish like on there. I mean, you've got these lovely stress cracks across there, so it'll come up in nice chunks, haven't you?
Yeah, easy,
Yeah.
easy.
Lovely.
Oh, look at the suture lines on that one there again. See, what's happening is that this part of the ammonites are actually in the middle of the limestone bed, and over there they've had several years to erode and the limestone's cut through, whereas here this is the top of the bed,
Yeah,
and the
just
seas
starting
it's just starting to come through, which is why we're seeing these really beautiful.
Nice.
In fact, I haven't, this is all new to me actually here.
Oh, right.
And then my favourite, the big clams, the big giant clams.
Plagiostoma.
Yeah, and there's a devil's toenail there as well.
Yeah.
Those things they're my favourite because they're really common, but it's actually really hard to rescue
this
them.
is the thing that everyone neglects. See, they go for the ammonites, they go for the reptiles and all these other stuff, the other fauna people neglect.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Tell you what, these cliffs are a lot more active than I thought they would be
Yeah.
today. What's that, the third or fourth
Yeah.
fall we've seen?
Yeah.
You could be right, there's an awful lot more
Yeah,
brachiopods
that's definitely
in
a
there.
brachiopod. Oh yeah, beautiful, look at that.
Tetrarhynchias.
Is that what they are?
Yeah, they're actually really nice.
Even these big ones.
What do you use?
£2 lump hammer,
Yeah.
an S-wing one.
That's what I normally have. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it?
Have a look, that fit on there, that does, doesn't it? There you go, look.
Yeah, glue it back together.
Yeah, beautiful. But your most common vertebrate is ichthyosaurs, aren't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
ichthyosaurs.
really, in some ways, you shouldn't say it, but 2 a penny here at Lyme. And so, hundreds that have been, they have, haven't
Hundreds,
they?
yeah.
Hundreds have been
yeah,
found.
Yeah.
Plesiosaurs, less so.
Yeah.
But I always remember there was a Victorian picture of a guy, have you ever seen him sat on a chair with a big moustache and this huge, great plesiosaur.
Samuel Clark from Charmouth.
Oh, God, where did that come from?
That came from the ledges in front of Black Ven,
And where's that specimen now then?
destroyed in the war.
Oh,
It
God.
was in Bristol.
You want to see this pliosaur, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bloody beautiful.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a
my
cast
God.
survives in the Natural
does
History
it?
Museum,
Oh, right.
but the original was lost when Bristol was bombed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about fish here then?
I think they're rarer than ichthyosaurs.
Yeah.
Whether that's because they get eaten and predated more
yeah,
readily,
probably.
or they are rarer, I don't know.
Dunno.
But
Well, you do get a hell of a variety though. You get a lot of sharks.
yeah,
You know, in the old collections, there's been a lot of, diverse species of fish been found.
yeah, so like 46 on the original nomination document, 46 known species, but that's 20 years old. I know Chris Moore's got at least 2 or 3.
All right, well, here we are at Kimmeridge. Totally different than the Lias rocks. We're sitting on these dolomitic limestones. When we look up on the cliff, we get a few of those. But mainly, here at Kimmeridge, they're just shells, organic shells and mudstones. And compared to Lyme Regis, for the fossils, it's pretty poor. It was always described as being the least interesting of the British fossil collector, and I can confirm that in some ways. The sparsity of material here is extreme, and the reason being, in some ways, is like down in Lyme, you get massive erosion, really, because the cliffs are quite soft, aren't they? And they get undercut, and everything collapses. Here, these shales and mudstones are quite robust, and they only wear away very, very slowly. Of course, this acts as rock armour, all this fallen material, and it just protects it all. I mean, I'd love to see the whole beach cleared of these stones, and then we'd see some sort of fossil material. So where we're sat, I mean, if we go now to the east, we've got the whole of the Upper Kimmeridge Clay, and you can probably see up there the rock, the strata sort of dipping down to the east. So as we walk we're walking up through time, so we can cover the whole of the Upper Kimmeridge Clay, which is about, I don't know, 230 metres thick.
I mean, to my mind, Steve, the difference is you're lucky because your Kimmeridge Clay is actually not dipping as steeply as at Lyme, and it's a lot thicker. So you've got Kimmeridge Clay, from right over there near Warbarrow, right the way through to Chapman's Falls, about 8 miles?
About 5 that we can see, 4.5, 5.
Whereas our lower lias is all reduced into really only about 1.5 miles. My God, if we had this...
Yeah, I know, with the same, with all your fossils, but here, you could walk this if you could do it in a day.
And you haven't done badly though, have you, to showcase that this is actually a really rich place? Because even you say it's eroding very slowly, but it's a big area.
It's
just like our ledges, at low tide. We go out at low tide, we don't go out expecting to find something, but if you keep doing it, you can find stuff. Well,
the nice thing is here, although these are quite large rocks, because they're on a hard substrate, the seal just move those, slide those back like pebbles.
Yeah.
So what we get often in the winter months is these rocks move and expose that shell underneath we couldn't otherwise see. But normally sod's law or shingle bank moves, the time I get to it, it could be a fish, the head's here, the tail's there, the middle's missing, eroded off. So...
But I guess the other thing is which bits of shale are fresh and which aren't. If I walked along here, I mean, I'm excited by all of these pieces, but you've seen them all before. But when there's a storm, where there's a fresh bit, where the shingle's been washed away, don't you?
Exactly, yeah.
And that gives you a big advantage over me.
Yeah, it does. And we get 2 tides here as well, so we get a double tide. So in other words, if we come here, say at 1 o'clock, the first low, about an hour afterwards, the tide just comes in a little bit, then 2 hours after that, it backs right off. And so we get a greater length of sort of collecting time, I guess. But of course, the difference is here, though, the sea's quite shallow. Yeah. So below sort of high water mark, there's a lot of weed growth. And although we know there's fossils there, it's just like a carpet of green. You can't find
your tidal range is quite small, though, isn't it? What's the maximum on the spring?
I don't know what you call tidal range. I mean, I go by normally a 2.2 metre tide is very good on a spring tide.
Yeah, see, we get 4.6, 4.8 on a really big spring tide. Just that little bit further down the channel. But you are right, I was on a boat out there years ago. It must have been half a mile offshore. It was a big 40-foot boat. We had, at one point, we ended up with like half a metre of water under the keel. And the skipper, very experienced guy, I've only seen him stand up a few times, that was one of them.
Yeah.
Very shallow. Makes you just wonder what is out there, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, because what we've found in the past is often this kelp, they hold fast on the ledges, and then during a storm it rips it up, and often it's attached to the fossil. Yeah. And it gets washed in, and you think, oh my God. In fact, someone picked up a big Bassus phenoid the other day with a kelp hold fast on it, And you just think, my God, what's out there? There's just masses of material. Yeah. Never to be seen by us hardly ever, So look at this. I know we're on neat tides, but we've got no window here to collect at all, really. No. And you look at that's a dangerous place to collect, just at the foot of the cliff. Yeah. And all the stuff's oxidised. So you can see all that pyrite staining, because that's one thing you don't get much at Lyme Regis is pyrite. To the extent we do, everything we've got is coated or composed of pyrite. Yeah. And
we have some that have some pyrite, a few that are absolutely hopeless, and you're right, most are pretty manageable. Yeah.
And your ammonites, you get in lovely nodules or limestones. Here, as you're probably well aware, they're all flattened.
Very beautiful though.
They're good.
And very different, of course, because the ammonites are evolving through time.
Yeah, they are. And the nice thing is, because everything's deposited below storm wave base, I mean, although the ammonites are crushed, every detail is still preserved. There's no storm action or any conditions where it slid across and eroded off, worn the surface. So you get nice preservation, although they're crushed. Yeah.
And then from my point of view, of course, I feel like I've travelled through time today, coming from Lyme Regis.
50 million years,
Yeah, we've travelled 50 miles and 50 million years. Yeah. And of course, the place, we're actually not very far from my rocks, but they're just down there, 2,000 or 3,000 metres.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah.
And the other lovely thing is that the oil that's coming out of
the oil
field over that's our oil. That's oil generated
our oil.
from our lower Jurassic rocks down there, creeping up through the rock
Yeah.
sequences and then being drilled out by the well. What, 1953 was it, or something like that?
Yeah, it come on stream back 1959. But of course, don't forget the Kimmeridge clay though. The floor was the whole of the North Sea, and that gave us our North Sea oil. So it's been buried at greater depth there.
Well, that's it. It's the secret is depth, burial of depth and maturity. So
Yeah.
ours off here, off Purbeck, the lower Jurassic is buried deep enough for the heat and pressure, whereas here, yours haven't, but in the North Sea they have. Yeah. And the North Sea, this is the main source of oil and gas, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is why you have so many petroleum geologists.
Oh yeah, the most intensively studied hydrocarbon source rock in the world.
Yeah.
This is, yeah. And for its microfossils as well, because they use those as indicators for oil. But the macro fossils, since I think Pete Langham used to collect many years ago with his dad here in the 60s. And then it got really, not a lot of people really came down here. Principally, if you're a commercial collector, it's not worth the effort. You never get the results, you know. But from my perspective, what we do find, which may not be complete, you know, like you do get in the Lias, it could be completely new.
Yeah. But when you would advise that there was nothing down here, you must have already had an idea that there actually was.
Yeah, because don't forget, in those days, I used to go to places like Dorset Museum, and they had stuff that came from here when they were quarrying for the oil shale and for the cement stones, and they found some brilliant material. And then we got to Natural History Museum, you know, Kimmeridge clay, all said Kimmeridge Bay. Well, the bay is a very small bay.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't just solely from the bay. So it's really spending those last 40 years, neglecting everything else, because everything else is often better preserved, and concentrating here that's yielded, well, the meagre results. They're quite meagre in some ways. It's not a massive collection, as one might say, but it's quite diverse.
Oh, I think you're underestimating your collection, Steve. It's really quite good.
Yeah, well, you say that. But compare it to something like the Oxford clay. Look at the Oxford clay material all over the world. Kimmeridge clay never been quarried that much, you know, such as for making bricks. They did, but not as much. But look at Gillingham in Dorset. Yielded some brilliant dinosaur material from the Kimmeridgian, and pliosaur material. So inland sites, especially in the clays, yield some Westbury, so spectacular vertebrate material. Really, just on a par with the Oxford clay in some ways. Ichthyosaurs, which are not being funny, but 2 a penny down in Lyme. There's hundreds must have come out, perhaps thousands. Down here, what else have we, before the ones I've found or we've got in the collection, there's probably one in the Natural History Museum which is not very well preserved at all, that came from here. And a skull, I think, from Ely. And not a lot else really. Oh, and the one that Pete Langham found, that was the point. Yeah.
Grendelius.
Well, it is, Brachypteris Regis now, but But there's not many. So I think Lyme through the last 200 years has yielded how many fish species?
I think it's about 46 is that's what the nomination document says.
Is it?
But
My God.
20 years old.
I would say probably we got in the collection, I don't know, about 15, but there's a lot more.
What, 15 species?
Yeah, 15, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So,
and don't forget, like thrissets, which when Pete Langham collected was rare for him. He found lots of caturids. The boots on the other foot, we found loads of thrissets and hardly any caturids.
The caturids are the
more predatory sort of fish.
Yeah.
But again, talk about different species here at Kimmeridge. I mean, no one's ever revised or looked at the different species. In fact, we've got someone now from Germany, a German academic, actually started to work on them and said, look, we've compared some of your species of fish, which you call, say, package thrissets, to ours. They're completely different. So whether that's a lateral sort of deviation, I don't know, but he's now really intensively looking at it. And the sharp material, so we got lots and lots of new stuff. So that may be a bit conservative, I don't know.
Yeah. How many new species do you think you might have in your collection?
Of what?
Of everything, across the board.
At the moment, 16 described at the moment, I don't know.
16 new species.
Yeah, and that's diverse stuff, so dragonfly, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. It's not just reptilian or fish.
I think down in Lyme we've had our fossil recording scheme running for 20 odd years now, we've got about, I think it's about 80 plus
Christ.
category 1 specimens. So those are things that are either unique or thought to be unique, or demonstrate exceptional elements of their features. So that, but whether that translates to 80 new species, I don't know. Well, we need to build a museum and put the things in a collection, don't we? So they can be studied.
Well, yeah, there is that point. Well, like I say, we know that the lyre, you know, down in West Dorset yields world famous material. I mean, it's just crying out for, we keep on about it, there's somewhere to display and keep it in Dorset where it belongs, not in Germany, not in London, not in Cambridge.
Yeah.
You know?